On this episode of the Psychic Derailleur podcast, I come back from the beach. Our red line runs into some issues. And if you get hit by a car while you're riding your bike, well, I guess that's just on you. Welcome back, everybody. At some point, I'll have some jaunty music and maybe a little bit of animation for those watching on the YouTubes. I did just get back from the beach. It had been an age since I had been anywhere, and thankfully my little baby brother lives in Fort Lauderdale, so I went and stayed with him for about 11 days actually. It was very nice. They were all complaining that it was too cold. Of course, I think a day and a half or 2 days after I left Indianapolis, they got about 2.5 inches of snow, so it was just fine with me. One of the things that I've been trying to do over the last, I don't know, at least handful of years is really kind of pare down the things that I have, kind of strip away anything that's unnecessary, and this certainly lends itself to travel as well. I have a roller bag from Eagle Creek, makers of fine luggage, that meets all of the carry-on requirements. So even if I'm going for a couple of weeks, I can fit everything I need into that bag. It's a system that with kind of these compressible folios and packing cubes, and it's really remarkable the amount of stuff that you can fit into this bag. And what I've determined is that even that holds too much. I didn't take a large amount of clothing by any means, and I wore half of it, I think. And it really, I had been thinking about, traveling with a backpack prior to this trip, but just didn't want to spend the money, and I already had this roller bag, and I thought, why spend that money unnecessarily? Coming home, I flew Southwest, which I normally do. If I'm taking short trips like that, I don't have any complaints with the airline. But if you've flown Southwest, you understand how their seating arrangements work. And, I've got the Southwest app. I checked in literally 24 hours before my flight. I mean, my flight was at 7:10. I think I checked in at 7:11 the night before. So I think it's 12 hours. I don't know. 24 hours. So 7:11 the night before. And I was in the B group, and what do you got to do to get into the A group with Southwest? By the time I got on the plane, there were a handful of seats, close to the front of the plane, but all of the overhead compartments were already taken up because, people take liberties with these bag things, not only the size of the bag, but the number of bags. And if I just had a backpack that I could throw under the seat in front of me, I could have sat anywhere I wanted and it wouldn't have made any difference. So I'm currently looking into just how small of a backpack, I can get away with. So if you're interested, maybe that'll be a part of a coming video and or podcast. But South Florida, I'd never been south of the Space Coast. And it's interesting down there. I certainly love being close to the ocean. We were hoping to do some diving, just some snorkeling actually. But it was very windy, and it just wouldn't lie down. So there was just really no visibility. We did get out on the boat a couple of days in the Intercoastal. And if you follow me on Instagram, which is at @the_psychic_derailleur, you've seen some of those pictures. Beautiful down there. And my mom lives on the other side of the coast now. So it was nice. It was a nice trip. Not entirely thrilled about being back in the land of permacloud, but it is what it is. The red line. So in the previous podcast, I talked about the red line, which is Indianapolis's bus rapid transit system. And there have been some issues. And, I think there's always going to be issues, right? With anytime you roll out something new, especially something as complicated as this. I think the thing that makes me sad about the whole thing is not the fact that there are issues, but there were so many people that just seemed to be rejoicing in the fact that there were issues with this thing. They were just, it was like they were waiting, hoping that there were going to be problems so that they could say, I told you so. And that's not helpful. I didn't hear any of these people during the run-up to the vote for this thing. I didn't hear any of them, promoting any kind of alternative or constructive input. It was just, we don't need it. It isn't going to work. And again, not helpful. So then to turn around and be gleeful when there are, issues with it, I just don't get it. I don't get it. So hopefully they'll get it. They'll get the thing worked out. And look, I don't know why we needed to do these battery operated buses either. Again, I've told the story about being in Minneapolis, and they just use regular old buses as far as I could tell. There are just a lot of them. But it wasn't up to me. And, now we've got it. And I think it's going to behoove us all to kind of hope that it and do everything we can to make sure it works out. We've already spent the money at this point. Saying I told you so, I don't think really does anything. So, I talked the last time about the National Transportation Safety Board and about how they just couldn't figure out why so many people were being killed by drivers, both cyclists and pedestrians. And, it really struck me as funny that they couldn't figure this out. But I have 3 stories, 2 of which from Bicycling Magazine, of all places. The first of which, and I will put links to these stories in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, and in the show notes if you're listening. And I've never done that before, but I got to imagine there's a way to do that if you want to read these to your own. So this first one, the headline, NTSB to bike riders, it's on you to stop getting hit by drivers. Jesus, Mary and Joseph. So the gist of this is that you should be wearing a helmet because 50% of the casualties were cyclists that were not wearing helmets. They don't tell you that, the other obvious part, which is half the people that got killed were wearing helmets. So I guess they're just looking for a higher percentage of deaths from people wearing helmets. And then we need to wear brighter clothing. Those are the big takeaways from these geniuses. They haven't said, they haven't put anything out in public about cycling apparently since 1972, if that gives you any indication. But it would be as if you got killed in a plane crash, well, you should have just picked a better plane. So, that's the first thing. And if you look at the story, you can kind of scroll down, and there's they posted a tweet from somebody named Peter Flax, of a cyclist in a, safety yellow, kind of that day glow yellow, helmet, jersey, arm warmers, gloves. The shorts are black, so I'm sure there's an issue there. But then the leg warmers, the socks, and the shoes are all this yellow. And his comment over the picture is, if you need me to look like this on my bike so you don't hit me, I think maybe you shouldn't drive a motor vehicle. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's about right. So, and the next story is from the Streets blog, and it basically comes down to how these, I don't know what you want to call them, incidents. They're not accidents, but how they're reported. And, it starts with, it's always the car, right? Cyclist killed by car. I didn't know we had self-driving cars yet, but the cyclist or the pedestrian was always killed by the car. No mention of the driver. The driver didn't have any part in this. And it's just pervasive. The quote victim blaming, because the first thing they're going to ask, and I kind of delved into this a little bit in the last podcast about the first question is, were you wearing a helmet? As if, that was going to have a huge bearing on the outcome of, let's be generous and say 200 pounds worth of human and bicycle versus a 3,500 pound car. 10 ounces of styrofoam on your head could certainly help. It can't hurt, but that shouldn't be the first question. So it goes into how these incidents are reported, and I don't know that we're really going to get a lot of help there. But I think the bigger issue is law enforcement, and the fact that most law enforcement officers don't understand the law. They don't understand that, a bicycle can ride, traffic permitting, and you can ride two abreast on the road, for example. So, we're up against it kind of coming from all areas. And then the third story is just kind of goes into why, this could, again from Bicycling Magazine, kind of some of the reasons why more cyclists are dying, and it's the vehicles are bigger, which is certainly true. Smartphone use is on the rise, sure. People drive more. It seems like, at least here, people are moving farther and farther away from where they work primarily. And they drive everywhere. If, again, the grocery store was, according to the Google, a 7-minute walk. And it wasn't 7 minutes from my brother's apartment. And I walked there a couple of times. Why, unless you were doing a big shopping trip, why would you drive? So, yeah, people drive more than ever. And then, there are more cyclists on the road. That was kind of, unfortunately, one of the things that was bound to happen. Anytime you get more people doing anything, there's always going to be that risk, right? In the 80s and 90s, when I first started riding, we didn't ever, hear about too many people being hit by cars, but there weren't a lot of us. out there on the road riding. You increase that tenfold, and you're probably going to get tenfold the amount of deaths, unfortunately. So like I said, I will put the links to these if you want to go through and read them yourself. They can be a little on the infuriating side if you're not careful. Lastly, I guess, today's Wednesday. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving, which seems strange. I had somebody in the store the other day, and I was talking to them about, the closing my other store and starting this new business, new venture. And I stopped to think about it, and it was like, that's almost been a year ago. Next month, a month from, a month and a handful of days from today, it will have been a year. And that just seems crazy. Not to sound like the old guy on the porch, but man, it just really flies by. Speaking of the old man on the porch, I have a disdain for yard work that is really hard for me to explain. It was made a little easier this year because I got this fancy battery-operated lawnmower, which was a bit of a revelation to me, and made by Ego, if anybody cares. I got no skin in that game, but it's worked well for me. And there was a bagger. And I thought to myself, you hate raking leaves. Why don't you try to chop them up with the lawnmower? And by God, man, it just worked slicker than hell. So I did it once before I left for Florida, and then I got back. And with all the cold weather that we had here while I was gone, I'm thinking certainly, I should be able to get out there and do this one last time. So Monday, I think we had a high of like 58. So I got up on the ladder and I cleaned out the gutters one last time, and I chopped up all the leaves and was feeling really good about myself. And this morning, I live on a cul-de-sac, and this morning, the winds are gusting up to, 40, 50 miles an hour. And apparently I was the only person on the cul-de-sac that decided to do anything with their leaves. So now my front yard looks like I didn't do anything on Monday. So that's my old man on the porch moment. But anyway, Thanksgiving. We like to look and think about, we're supposed to think about what we're thankful for. And honestly, one of the things I'm thankful for is all of you. I really appreciate the people that take the time to listen to my musings and ramblings, and the comments and the suggestions. I really appreciate it. I've had a lot of fun doing this, and I hope to continue to make the shows better, and hopefully you'll keep listening and tell your friends. I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving. Until next time, be nice, work hard, ride bikes, play music when you can. I'll talk to you soon.